Hi everyone! Super excited to introduce to you Julia Ekwall, who is an LA-based actor and activist who volunteers for Earthling Ed and his animal rights organization, Surge. She's one of the most energetic people I've known, and I'm super excited to hear her talk today. So introducing you to Julia. Take it away.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And thank you so much for having me, Zena. Honestly, it's a true honor. Today's my birthday, so what a great way to celebrate my birthday. I do tend to ramble, so please feel free to cut me off at any point. Everyone can hear me okay, right? Yeah? Okay, awesome. So yeah, let's get started. So, today is going to be less of a lecture and more of a story. So I thought I would first tell you a little bit about myself so that you know who you're listening to. So I'm Julia. I am an actor who just moved to LA from Connecticut. So definitely quite a culture shock. I'm an animal rights activist who volunteers for Earthling Ed and Surge. And for fun, I love to travel the world. I kind of feel like we're speed dating right now. So, my veganism story. I started to question meat at a very young age. I wouldn't say that there was a light bulb moment, but one of my earliest memories was watching the film Babe. And I think that came out in 1995. So I was 3 years old, and I don't even think a lot of you were born at that time. But, anyways, I'm definitely dating myself. I watched that film, and the first scene, I just remember being so affected by the first scene in that film. So, Babe is a pig, it's a story about a pig, and he's with all of his siblings in the beginning, and he's with, they're all with their mothers, and then these huge trucks come in and take all the mothers away. And I just remember being, even though I was only 3 years old at that time, just watching that and just recognizing that something about that just did not feel right. And of course, it's a kid's film, so you don't see any slaughter going on. You don't see any of that imagery, but it's obviously implied what's going to happen to the mothers. And yeah, I just remember being really affected by that, just feeling something really visceral inside. So yeah, I was on and off vegetarian growing up. I grew up in a meat and dairy consuming household, as I think we all did, and just, yeah, a meat and dairy consuming society. We're taught from a very young age that we need these products to survive. And you're growing up watching these ads, like the got milk ads. I don't know if that's still a thing now, but definitely back then there were so many ads like that. And just growing up in that culture can feel very you can just feel very distant, I guess, because you're questioning things that society, everyone just feels that that's what is supposed to be. I don't know if I said that very eloquently. So anyways, I decided to go fully vegetarian in ninth grade after watching a documentary in my social studies class about the meat industry in the 1920s. And even though it was about the 1920s, they showed clips of animals being slaughtered today. And one of the clips was a man picking up a pig by their feet and slitting their throat. And I just remember hearing the scream and just being so incredibly disturbed by that. And so I walked out of the classroom without even telling my teacher where I was going. And I just, stayed in the bathroom for about probably 10 minutes and then came back. And my teacher was like, so, like, where did you go? And I told him that I just couldn't I couldn't sit through that. It was just really, really traumatizing. But in a way, I'm really happy that I was exposed to that because I decided to go fully vegetarian that year. So in a way, I'm actually kind of grateful for that moment. Um, I decided to go fully vegan about 4.5 years ago. I decided that, you know what, enough is enough. And obviously, being vegetarian, you are helping, of course. But the more I did research, so I did a lot of research, at that point, from like between ninth grade until I became vegan. And yeah, just the more I did research, the more I realized that this is something that I don't want to participate in. This is something I don't want to support, because not only is it immeasurably cruel to the animals, but it's also incredibly destructive to our planet and to our health. So yeah, going vegan definitely was one of the best decisions of my life. So I guess I'll talk about my activism journey. I started protesting when I was a teenager. I remember my friend's mom would drive us to the local KFC, and we would stand outside with our big posters. And one time a car drove by and they yelled at, "You guys are poison!" So that was, not nice to hear. But anyways, so yeah, I started protesting around then. And yeah, I've just been advocating for animal rights for as long as I can remember, and just trying to inspire people to go vegan. So, as you know, I'm an actor, I work in the film industry. So I may be biased, but I believe that film is such a powerful medium. Um, I believe that film connects with everyone. And I mean, there's so many incredible documentaries like Cowspiracy, Seaspiracy, like, Zena and I were just talking about. Seaspiracy, I believe, was just released on Netflix for anyone who has not seen it yet. It's incredible, by the same producers that produced What the Health and Cowspiracy. So definitely check that one out. I think it's like one of the top 10 films on Netflix right now. And then, of course, there's the documentary Dominion, which I would not watch on a Friday night if you're trying to have a good time. But it's obviously such an important film. They hid cameras in a lot of factory farms around Australia, and I believe in some other parts of the world. And so you're just exposed to the truth of what happens behind closed doors. So yeah, Dominion is a great one to watch. But I would say that if you are going to show one of your friends that documentary, maybe show them one of these first, and then show them that towards the end. But anyway, so then there's Blackfish. They have the Game Changers. That's also on Netflix. Actually, I think Dominion's on YouTube for free. So that one you can watch for free. What the Health is another great one. That's also on Netflix. So there's just I could go on and on. There's so many incredible films out there that you can watch with your friends and family and just start that conversation with them, And so that's how I personally do it. So today's my birthday. And I don't know if I said that already, but what I do with my family is I tell them, for my birthday, will you watch this vegan documentary with me? And of course, they can't say no because it's my birthday. So that's, just one tip. Also, there's so much power in conversation. I think that's really underestimated. I think a lot of vegans, especially new vegans, they don't really know how to speak to other, to non-vegans in a way that they feel will help. But there's so much power in conversation. For example, I turned one of my neighbors vegan. So she was vegetarian already. And this was back when I was in Connecticut. And I started to babysit for her child. And just every time I would go over, we would talk about veganism. And it was not, me proselytizing or standing on a soapbox and trying to, badger her with, all this information about veganism. It was really just casual conversations. And yeah, she told me that I was the one that turned her vegan. So how incredible is that? So you really can make a difference. And it's really just about planting that seed in people's minds. So even if you have a conversation with someone and you're like, oh, I don't know if that really did anything, you're really doing more than you think. So yeah, I'd love to inspire people to just keep talking about it. So at the beginning of COVID, I was feeling incredibly despondent about the state of the world. I just felt like no one was understanding the cause of COVID, which, as we know, is a zoonotic disease. So I was just feeling super frustrated and sad because it felt like no one cared. The mass suffering that we are inflicting on billions of animals every year is causing us harm and the planet harm. I do have this story of hope though, and yeah, I just think you'll really enjoy this. So again, this is around that time when I was feeling really depressed and despondent about everything. This was back in Connecticut. I took a walk, my morning walk, and I was just so overcome with sadness, and I was just feeling really emotional. And halfway through the walk, I just started to weep, like actually weep. And this is in public, right? I'm walking around and all these cars are passing me, probably thinking I'm crazy. And I just cannot stop crying. And I get back to my neighborhood and I turn the corner. And as I turn the corner, this beautiful iridescent blue butterfly out of nowhere just comes and stops right in front of my path. And I just remember, just stopping in my tracks and being like, oh, it's a sign. It just felt like a sign of hope. And I just love that story so much. It may seem very simple, but that was a big moment for me. And in that moment, I realized, I got to buckle down and become an activist to create real change, because I want to be part of the solution, and not part of the problem. So I decided to reach out to Earthling Ed, who obviously I'm sure many of us are a big fan of. He's incredible. And I wanted to get involved with Surge, his animal rights organization. So what's so funny is I literally turned on an Earthling Ed podcast. And as I turned that podcast on, Toddy, who I believe is here with us today, she was the one who emailed me. And I got that email notification. And I was like, wow, this is such, again, like another sign that this is meant to be. And so it's been incredible. I have been volunteering for them for maybe a little less than a year now. I started this past summer. So yeah, it's been really incredible. And something that Toddy and I have been playing around with is this idea of starting a mentorship program. So it's very much in the early stages right now. So I'm not going to say too much right now, but I will definitely keep you updated. And Zena, I'll tell you, when I figure out what we're doing with that, and you can, email your community about it. So yeah, I guess in conclusion, I just want to say that I am vegan because it aligns with my values. I don't want to cause unnecessary harm to sentient beings. I want to contribute as little as I can to the climate crisis. And I want to choose a lifestyle that is going to be best for my health. yeah, veganism just ticks all the boxes. I think that's why vegans are so passionate about it. It's because, we've grown up a certain way, believing that we need dairy and, dairy and meat, and that, this is all totally normal. And we've been doing it for, years and years and years. So, why stop now? But then you finally start to wake up, and yeah, I'm just so passionate about it. So yeah, we do have a long way to go, but I would say that there's still hope. And yeah, that's what I want you to get from this talk. You are more powerful than you think, and you truly can change the world. I know that sounds super cheesy, but yeah, it's just the truth.
Thank you so much for sharing, Julia. So we'll now open the floor up to questions if anyone has any. This is just basically like a dialogue, and if you want to get to know Julia more and a little bit more about her story, feel free to speak up or type your questions in the chat. I guess I can start off. I do have 2 questions for you, Julia. So
Okay.
the first one is, how did you get involved in acting? And the second one is, how do you envision like a combination of film and veganism in your future career?
Oh, that's a really great question. Okay. So how did I get into acting? Gosh, I feel like I knew I loved to act before I knew I loved to act, if that makes sense. I always grew up watching films, and just being so immersed in that world. And then I think around the age of 12 to 13, I realized that, oh, people actually do this for a living. Like, people actually make this a career, which is fascinating still to me now. And so, yeah, I think at that moment, I was like, this is definitely what I'm meant to do. And yeah, just being able to act in movies and tell stories. I mean, what a privilege is that, So yeah, that's my acting story. So yeah, I've just been acting since I was 12 years old. I was a theater major in college. And then out of college, I got more into film. I was always into film, but in terms of, my acting career, definitely acted in more films. I think when I acted in The Mountain, that was sort of the turning point for me. It actually started out as just a student film, but it turned into something much more. It turned into a feature film, actually, and it was picked up by a distributing company in Texas. So just super cool. But yeah, anyways, so that's a little bit about my acting story. And then what was your other question?
The second question is like, how do you envision film and veganism to be like a combination in your future?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess it's a bit tricky because I'm an actor, so we have a little less say in, the projects that we are involved with, unfortunately. But in terms of film and veganism in general, I think that, I mean, clearly, with Seaspiracy coming out recently, right? And it being such a huge topic right now. I mean, it's one of the top 10 trending films on Netflix. Like, how massive is that? I think that so many people are going to, be exposed to these types of films and just be educated, So yeah.
Okay, so there's a question in the chat. I know people who are already interested in veganism. How can I make my conversations with them the most productive?
I would say, actually, Earthing Ed just came out with like a newsletter about this. I should just read off his email. But I would say the most important thing to do is because the main point is for them to, come on the team, right? Like, we want to attract people and not, scare people away from the cause. So I would say to be just an empathetic listener, and yeah, just really listen to the other party. I think oftentimes, and this goes with anything, not just with veganism, but any, hot topic. Sometimes we tend to just not hear the other person. We're just thinking about what we're going to say next, And so it becomes this sort of like battle. But that's not what we're trying to do here. And I think when the other side feels like they're being listened to, that's when, the magic happens. And yeah, and then just state your points very clearly and with no judgment. We're not coming from a place of judgment, but just coming from a place of, this is what I have learned, here's what I know, here's what I've researched, and, and sort of lay it to them on the table. And also, I think Earthling Ed says that, a really great way to communicate with non-vegans is to ask them questions, right? So instead of being like, you're a bad person for like doing this, it's like, do you think, eating meat is ethical? Or do you think, killing animals is ethical? Or, that kind of stuff. So there's definitely productive ways to communicate with non-vegans. Also, like I said earlier, again, I may be biased because I'm in this industry, but film is such a powerful way to connect with people. And so, you can, like me on my birthday or on your birthday, you can just be like, hey, Pam, do you want to watch this vegan documentary with me? And, how can they say no to you? It's your birthday. So things like that. And to be honest, like, even if it's not your birthday, just asking your friends, like, hey, would you be willing to watch this film with me? And oftentimes they're going to say yes, because if they're your friends, like, hopefully you have nice friends. So yeah, oftentimes they're going to say yes. For example, my good friend Josh, he's amazing and he's so incredibly supportive. Now he eats meat, but he's definitely on a vegan journey right now. And I've been sort of helping him along this journey for months now. We started watching, I think the first documentary we watched together was Cowspiracy, because that's a bit more neutral, that's about the environment, and people tend to be less, aggressive or, defensive when you're talking about the environment. And so, yeah, we started watching that film, and then we watched, What the Health, The Game Changers, Okja, all these films. And then we ended up watching Dominion together. And again, like I said, I think if you're going to show people Dominion, definitely show it to them, later on in their journey, because it's very traumatizing and intense for people. But yeah, that's what I would say.
So another follow-up question, do you find that some sorts of messaging, like the environment, health, ethics, are more effective than others?
That's a great question. Great questions, Chris. Yeah, honestly, it's sad because for me, like, obviously I'm vegan for all those reasons, right? But fundamentally, primarily, I am an ethical vegan. That's what I would say. That's why I first got into it, was because of the animals. But unfortunately, I think the majority of this world is, it could be because they're not as educated on how sentient animals are. But I would say that I would come from a place of talking about, health and environment, probably health even more so. Again, unfortunately, because you would think that people would be like, oh, the planet, we should probably protect the planet, the one planet we live on. But unfortunately, I think the first way to get into people's hearts and minds is to come from the health aspect, and then talk about the environmental and ethical implications. Oftentimes, you will hear about those vegans who do become ethical vegans, but they first got into veganism because of health. So I think once people start learning about the health issues, then everything else kind of falls into place after that. So yeah, I would say start off with health, and then I'm sure they'll go down the rabbit hole in their own time and learn about everything else. Okay, so yeah, how do you talk about health in a nice way? Um, yes, you're right. It's a very sensitive topic. It's controversial because I think a lot of people are like, well, I know myself best and da 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 da, and I've been doing this for my whole life. So that's a tricky one. Um, Personally, this may be a cop out, but personally for me, I'm like, oh, well, there's this great documentary called What the Health and the Game Changers, like kind of push them towards those films because I mean, I'm certainly not a doctor. Well, actually, that's another great point. You can bring up, Dr. Klaper, who also spoke with, this group, and like send them TED Talks. Dr. Klaper has a great TED Talk. I think it's only about 20 minutes long, so super easy for people to watch. And yeah, I would say like put them towards those resources if you don't feel comfortable talking about it to them, because I know it is difficult. I mean, for example, my mother, unfortunately, my mom was admitted into the ICU this past or 2 years ago now, because 2019. So that was very, very scary for all of us, and you want to talk to her about health, and you want to talk to her about plant-based eating and that kind of lifestyle. But unfortunately, it's a bit difficult, with the older generations. Just because they've grown up with it, right? And we have too. But I think what's different about our generation is that we're exposed to all these other perspectives, right? So we're a lot more, I don't know, liberal or open, to different perspectives and ideas. So it can be a bit difficult with the older generations. But again, even my father, who is probably the most stubborn person I know. I don't know if any of you have dads like this. But yeah, my dad is super stubborn. Even he has cut back immensely on his dairy intake because of the films I've been showing him. So there's hope.
Yeah, so there's a follow-up question from Chris. Do you find a lot of people saying that they have health issues that prevent them from being vegan?
Yes, you definitely get those people for sure. Yeah, it's a tricky one because again, I'm also not a doctor, so I really can't. And you don't, it's because it's so sensitive, you don't want to point fingers and say, well, you're wrong, like, how dare you for being sick and feeling this way. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Again, I would say, yeah, just show them those documentaries. And also there are plant-based doctors out there, right?
So I have quick question about like your upbringing slash like peer interactions. So I know a lot of people tend to have like stereotypes of vegetarians and vegans. And so like I know I've received a couple of like comments like, oh, what do you eat if you don't eat meat or dairy? Do you just eat grass, right? So how do you deal with that? And like how do you just go about educating your friends?
That's another great question. I would say that, I mean, honestly, I'm at the point where now I just laugh about it, because you always get those comments like, oh, so like, do you only eat leaves for breakfast? And it's like, you're dumb. You just have to sort of laugh at those comments because it's obviously not true. And I think a lot of it, you have to realize that, these people, again, when they are around you, to them, it feels like an offense, it's like, because they're they're thinking that you're judging them, when actually it's the opposite that's happening, right? Um, Unfortunately. But yeah, I would say you just have to laugh it off. And at the end of the day, know who you are and what you stand for. Because yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna butcher this quote. Jane Goodall has like the best quote. I probably should have like brought it up right now, but anyway, so Jane Goodall says something about, because everything is, controversial, right? Everything can be up for debate, no matter what the topic is. And that goes, obviously for veganism as well. And she says something along the lines of, if you feel something in your heart, like if you really feel like this, something is not right, you just have to, yeah, just fight for it. And even if other people are saying that, oh, you're wrong, like how could you, live that way, you just have to know yourself at the end of the day and stick to your guns. That was not a that was not a Jane Goodall quote. But yeah, so she said something like that. And yeah, I think that's just a great rule of thumb to know yourself. And yeah, to just stick with it, stick what you feel is right, listen to your heart.
Awesome, thank you. Another question in the chat. So I was just talking to someone yesterday who said that their religion prevents them from being vegan. Have you encountered that response, and how do you sort of talk to them and approach that situation?
Oh, that's interesting. I actually have not approached, or I've never had that experience before. If anything, the opposite, I would say. I think a lot of people have come to me saying that I can't eat beef because of my religion, or my culture. I would say again, this is a very delicate subject. So you want to approach this with empathy and, with a certain kind of sensitivity. I would say to them, again, very gently, that there's so many traditions, right, that we wouldn't do now, right? For example, back in the day, there was slavery, right? And, we wouldn't do that now. Or, obviously still goes on today, of course. But we look down on it, as a whole society looks down on it. So I would say that, maybe I wouldn't use the slavery example, but, things like that, where it's like, just because it's written down somewhere, right? In someone's culture or religion, it does not mean that it's right. And if you feel something in your heart that's telling you that this is not okay, then yes, it's okay to question culture. It's okay to question religion and tradition. You know?
Yeah, I think it's like that concept where like culture evolves over time, and you sort of pick and choose like the best things that work in like current society. So I think you're like touching upon that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I sort of wanted to ask you a question based off of your ethnicity. So typically Asian cultures are meat centric. So has anyone sort of like been surprised that you are vegan, given that you are ethnically Asian? And how do you approach that situation?
Yes, so I'm actually adopted. So I grew up in a white family, in a white neighborhood and community. But yeah, so I actually met my birth mother, who's Vietnamese. I'm Vietnamese. A few years ago, which was such an incredible, obviously epic moment in my life. And I would say that, well, yeah, I mean, even growing up, in an all Caucasian family, You get slack for it for sure. But especially, yeah, from, the Asian side, definitely my birth mother has made so many comments. She still, will make comments now like, oh, so are you eating meat again? It's like, nope, still vegan. And I just have to sort of politely remind her that this is something I'm really passionate about, and that this is something I'm not budging on. This is a lifelong thing for me. I'm in it for the long run. And I used to work at a Thai restaurant back in the day, and it was mainly other Asian employees. And so, a lot of my coworkers would make comments like, oh, you're not a real Asian, because you don't eat meat, or, that sort of thing. So again, kind of, what we talked about before, you just have to sort of laugh, at those comments, and yeah, just, know yourself. And I mean, of course it can hurt. Don't get me wrong. It can definitely hurt for sure. But yeah, I think you just need to remind yourself why you're doing it. And yeah. Chris coming with all the questions.
So he says some animal advocates say that getting larger numbers of people to be meat reducers is more impactful than getting people to go vegan. What do you think about that?
Yeah, these are some tricky questions, Gab. That is tricky because, like, there's this one documentary, I think it was in What the Health, where, one of the doctors was also asked this question at one of his interviews, right? Kind of about like the meatless Mondays. And he's like, okay, so like, great. So you're just not, destroying your body and the planet, one day a week. Woo! So it's kind of like that. Now, again, of course, you don't want to discourage people. Again, we're trying to attract people to the cause and to our team, right? But at the same time, you do have to be real with people and acknowledge that just because you limit your intake of certain products doesn't mean that it's making a huge impact. It's definitely making an impact, but it's you can do better. And, I guess that's kind of the tough love for me, is that you can do better. And I mean, we have to, unfortunately, I mean, to go back to the environmental issues, right, of it, we have to do better. We really, because I'm a very sort of friendly, passive person. So I'm going to be the last person to be, shoving this down people's throats. But even me, I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I really need to acknowledge that this is an issue. I mean, we are dealing with a climate crisis. It's a crisis at this point, and I'm incredibly worried for my future. And if I'm worried about my future, I'm 29. I'm really worried for people who are a lot younger than I am, for all the kids, and all the babies coming into the world right now. I'm really worried about their future. So this is something that we really need to emphasize and, not dance around. So, again, I'm not a pro at this. This is something I'm still working on for sure. But yeah, I think we do need to sort of really emphasize how, crucial this is, because, again, it's not just for the animals, it's not just for our health, it's for humanity's survival. So it's a massive deal.
So I know you said you're like a little bit passive in terms of like veganism or spreading veganism to other people. But is there anything that you do in maybe your daily life, or when you go to something related to your work, that sort of shares that message indirectly, just so to get people aware or maybe spark a conversation?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, you know, being on film sets, I think is a great way to connect with people and to meet new people and to talk about veganism, um, because instead of being like, oh, like you're eating a meat sandwich, how gross, like, do you know that this is really bad for this and this and this? Um, for example, I, was on set recently and there was another vegan on set, right? So he and I got to have a conversation about veganism and, bond over our vegan sandwiches that we ordered for lunch. And, other people just overhear these conversations, and then you can sort of bring other people into it. And I think that is such a great way to perform activism. Like I said before, I think people really underestimate the power of conversation. And I think for me, especially like in the beginning, I would have a conversation with someone about veganism and I would be like, "Oh, okay, they didn't get anything from that conversation. Like, I did not change their mind, but then you do actually change their mind. And, months later, honestly, I get countless messages from people months later, um, messaging me saying, like, I'm going vegan. And it's because, you inspired me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot we even had that conversation. So, you really do just spark that interest in people. And you just plant that seed in their heads. And yeah, so I would say that's a great way. And again, showing people films, because again, I don't have all the statistics memorized. I know Earthling Ed does, but I'm not at that level yet. But because I don't know, all the facts and figures, I just show other people, where they can get them.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. So another question in the chat related to like your daily lifestyle. So do you feel that being vegan is more expensive? And what is a way to like budget it, especially with like organic fruits and vegetables?
Mhm.
Yeah, how do you make it more affordable to the public?
That's a great question. So you and I were just talking about this yesterday, how when I used to live in London. I was working for two vegan YouTubers, Jenny and David Mustard. Hey, if you're listening, probably not. But anyways, so when I was living in London, which is like notorious for being an expensive city, right? I was spending probably only $25 or 25 pounds a week on groceries. I mean, how incredible is that? Um, and I know I would come back to the US and tell people that, and they were like, what? Like, how did you survive on $25 a week? Like, tell me your secret. And of course, I was buying a lot of, beans and rice and, canned goods. So that obviously cuts down a lot of costs. But also I was still buying, like fruits and vegetables. Um, and you just make it work. It's honestly a lot easier than people think. Again, like a can of beans, what is that going to cost you? Like $1 the most? Like maybe not even. I think actually in London it was like 25 cents or something crazy like that. But again, you can just really cut down costs. Again, especially with like buying organic and just buying like fresh fruits and vegetables. You can buy them in bulk. There's so many companies now that you can buy from that they'll actually ship you like boxes of organic fruits and vegetables for a very low price, because it's like the stuff that other people didn't want. It's not bad. It's just I think there's like a company called Imperfect Foods that does that. But anyways, there's so many ways to do it. Also, buying in bulk is another great way to cut down on costs. It's really doable. It's honestly so doable. And I'm definitely frugal when it comes to grocery shopping. So I am like, I can attest to this for sure. Trust me, you will not be spending an arm and a leg. Obviously, if you're buying Beyond Meat all the time, that may be a little pricey. But yeah, there's just so many options and ways to do it. Yeah.
Is the ability to reach people at scale what draws you to film?
I would say that's one of the reasons for sure. Yeah, definitely. What a great question. Yeah, I think what draws me to film, acting in film, is being able to connect with an audience. And yeah, if it happens to be at a large scale, that's even better. And hopefully, the film that you're in is, has a good message. But yeah, I mean, it would be so incredible to be in a film about veganism. I mean, the film Okja, right? Like, that's like my dream. So hopefully that director will make another like Okja 2 or something that I can be cast in.
So I have a follow-up question about like your acting career. So I know that you said like actors sometimes don't have a say in like what happens in the film, but do you like, I know some actors have worked or like become a producer and an actor in the same film. So do you foresee yourself doing something like that sort of shares like awareness of the plant-based movement?
Yeah, no, that would be absolutely incredible. I think right now the reason why it's a bit tricky for me is because I'm auditioning mainly for sort of narrative, more narrative pieces, but definitely down the road when I'm a little more established in LA. I moved about 2 months ago, a little less than 2 months ago. So I'm still kind of getting my bearings and, establishing myself, but definitely down the road when I'm more established in LA, for sure. I mean, that would be such a dream to produce my own film about this topic. That would be, an absolute dream come true. So yeah, definitely down the road. Maybe not right now, but for sure down the road.
Thank you so much, Julia, for sharing your story and being so accessible to us. Definitely love to hear all your insights and experiences.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Zena. It's been such an honor doing this. And what a great way, again, to celebrate my birthday. So yeah, I can't wait to we'll definitely have to do this again.
Yeah, definitely. And have a wonderful birthday.
Thank you.